Hey everybody, welcome to BrickVault. Today in front of us is the Doom Slayer from Jarek. This is a custom Lego build based on the design from the latest game in the Doom franchise, Doom Eternal. And I'd consider him the ultimate unsung hero of slaying demons. People often don't even know what this guy is called, but essentially he is the ultimate space marine who ends up fighting solo against the forces of hell. This started back in 1993 with the original Doom game, and several iterations later they are still playing the same basic power chords with some awesome first-person shooter evolution. And in this video I am going to be taking a much closer look at the finer details of this model. Jarek really added some extremely nice building techniques to show as much accuracy and detail as possible. Before I jump into the finer points on this model, I do want to say that if you wanted to build this for yourself, you can get the instructions at our web store, www.brickvault.toys. Included with each purchase are the PDF step-by-step building instructions, as well as a digital parts list for ordering your pieces online. Buying instructions from us is a great way to help support what we do here at BrickVault, as well as the extremely talented designers that we work with, like Jarek. He is one of the more prolific designers that we work with, having tons of other models up in the web store, and he's truly one of those guys that pushes the Lego bricks to their absolute limit. If you pay attention to the hell-based theme of this model and then the part count that Jarek not so subtly slipped in there, you'll know that he's very much detail-oriented. And now it is time to take a closer look at this rather large Lego figure. This model measures at 12.5 inches high, including the shoulder cannon, which is around 32 centimeters, 6.5 inches wide, 17 centimeters, and 7.5 inches deep or long. That includes the shotgun pointing forward, which is around 19 centimeters. We figured the model being around a foot high is actually a great scale because from afar it looks like the Doom Slayer. The recognizable features and color tones translates really well from across the room. As you get closer, lots of the details really pop, especially with those open studs on the wrist and subtle angles for the olive armor. And then only when you get a bit closer do you realize it's actually made of Lego bricks. And the fact that it's simply a custom Lego design does not draw away, I think, from its presence as a model. I really enjoy the stance. The legs don't really move, the feet aren't really meant to move around. In fact, he's only got a little bit of posability here and there, but the baseline stance that this character has right now really adds a lot of life. The feet are facing outward ever so slightly, there's a little bit of bend to the knees. The weight is tilted forward on the body in general, just to a hair, and it feels like this character is indeed standing there instead of a figure that has just been placed in a standing position. Now, when it comes to the actual movable features, let's start at the top and work our way down. There is the shoulder cannon that has a couple of articulating joints there, mostly with mixels. This, of course, can move around in just about any way that I suppose you would want, whether it's side to side, up and down, straight up, or of course this somewhat leaned forward and at the ready cannon that kind of hangs over one side of his head. Next, the head itself can actually move just a little bit of articulation from side to side. It doesn't spin all the way around. In fact, he can't even look too sharply in either direction. It's just a slight angle from one side to the other. You can see when I shake the table, the head actually bobbles around a little bit, which is just the way this particular joint was set up. And you can also tilt his head up and down ever so slightly as well. There's a little bit of friction there, and so the hinge can articulate in a way where his head tilts up and then down, but it's pretty subtle. Now when it comes to the shoulders, you can sort of wiggle them around on the torso, but there really isn't any friction points for them to be held upward or moving back. So really the shoulders aren't an articulatable point of the model, but you can twist the arms ever so slightly at the biceps, which allows you to move the arms inward or outward a little bit, and this is better for if you wanted to place the shotgun in both hands as opposed to him holding it in just one. Speaking of which, the wrists can move on either arm, and of course the fingers can articulate as well. As a display model, this isn't like a play feature. You sort of have to finesse little things here and there, and there's often small angular details that you have to hold in place or reorient every time you change the position of this figure. Kind of comes with the territory when you have so many subtle details pushed into such small spaces, but there you have it for the articulation and movable features of the model. Now let's get into where this Doomslayer Lego build really shines, and that is the amazing techniques and angles achieved in order to create all this very subtle detail that you see on this guy. Let's start at the head. Either side of the cheek plate for the helmet are both canted inward on a subtle angle. It's a great way to outline the shape of the helmet. I also like that he used those old toothed hinge pieces at the top for some extra detail. And then jumping onto the torso, there are so many different angles colliding all at the same time. The alternate color browns on the top are independently connected at a different angle. There's a hinge in the center of them. The plate right below is connected vertically. Then we have an independent connection for these olive green teeth, a slightly different connection for the dark tan and brown in between them. The oblique section on either side is once again connected in a different way, and the ab-like armor in the center is actually leaning forward ever so slightly, so it's on a different hinge connection there as well. The tiny little slopes in between them are also connected in a different way, and I mean, this is just the basic rule for the model almost everywhere, but when you take a little bit of a step back, each individual component that makes up the torso creates excellent proportions and a particular kind of accuracy that you rarely see in Lego bricks. Now it's time to turn the model around, taking a closer look at the back. The spine really pops out at a much sharper angle. You can see he's got like big shoulder muscles and stuff. This is outlined by the twisted, stacked 1x2 plates. Still consistently probably my favorite newer-ish part, and the bullion pieces in brown for the belt make up the little utility pack pretty well. The builds for the shoulders have some very interesting tension-held pieces. That dish piece is actually being kind of pinched into place, and the same goes for the top part of the shoulder as well. Creates an excellent round look, and there are a few areas on the model that have extremely specific shapes, and these are meant to imitate exact details as seen on the character, the actual Doomslayer from the game. Some of this comes out in different underlying highlights, like some of the bright reds or a little bit of the bright yellow on the belt. The open studs for a lot of those 1x2 round plates imitate these sort of spikes that you see on his gloves and around his body, and certain specific shape and color highlight features that I'm not even bothering to talk about. If you really do take a close look at the original digital model, they're all meant to imitate as close as possible what you could actually do in Lego bricks. Now we should take a moment to appreciate the super shotgun. Those curved blade pieces at the bottom work really well to outline the shape of the grappling hook, and the build for the barrels seems simple enough, though there is a strange and interesting connection for that tile in the center. Jarek used an interesting technique to make the curve of the handle, and it's probably the best weapon to use to pose with this guy due to its sort of iconic nature. And before you guys ask, no, there is not a design for the BFG 9000. I appreciate the use of those 1x1 brackets for the blade on the other arm, and there are simply too many specific details to really get into when talking about this model. I might as well get into the handling section of the video right now. You've seen most of the features already moving around. I just want to show you guys how casually you can pick up the model. In general, the main bits of the front, like the abs and the chest, you can just pick up and pinch in the center, and it's pretty strong. Of course, you can move around all the other smaller features without too much trouble. I would recommend holding on to the shoulders while moving the biceps, for example. But the legs and feet and just about any of the extremities feel solid enough when moving it around. The center weight is pretty good, so I'm not hovering my hands around the body of this guy every time I place him on the ground. So in terms of a display piece, you do have to be careful around him. I'm sure pieces will break off if you drop him, but you're not going to have to hold your breath every time you move him from one place to the next. This model in particular has an extremely dense amount of slightly different angular connections all compacted into one area, which makes for an extremely interesting build. We discovered new techniques. I'm sure you would too if you built it. And it's models like this that make custom building so much fun, because you really do discover new things every time you tackle a different project. Anyways, guys, if you wanted to build this model for yourself, the instructions can be found at our web store, www.brickvault.toys. I think Jarek really honored this character with his precision and high level of details. So like always, let us know what types of builds you would like to see us making in the future. Remember, if you enjoy our content, you can always like or subscribe, share the video. Thanks so much for sticking around to the end, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault.